Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today we're changing the brakes on our 2020 Ford Explorer Limited trim. We're gonna do the fronts and show you how we're doing it on our process. I've got Hadley helping me out. You'll see here in just a bit. Let's jump in. All right, this is what that looks like. So on the Ford Explorer, it's got a system where you pull twice to release the hood, and then you come around the front and you don't have a latch underneath anymore. Instead, you get to just, voila, lift up the hood and put up the kickstand. There we go. Okay, on the 2020 Ford Explorer, with at least with a limited trim, I'm not sure about the others, the brake fluid is located on the driver's side underneath this cover right at the back. So Hadley's gonna help us take that off real quick. Here we go, and there is the brake fluid reservoir. All we need to do is twist the cap off and set it to the side. Just that way, the fluid has room to come back up into that reservoir as you compress the calipers. Here on the passenger side, which we're gonna get started with, it's the same process on both sides of the vehicle. You've got two 14mm bolts, and one at the top of the caliper and one at the bottom of the caliper. Yeah, so here's the 14 mils right here, and then there's another one right down here. I'm using a 14 mil deep well impact socket with a 1/2 inch ratchet. You could probably get away with a 3/8, just depends on how tight they are. And you could probably do a shorty if you wanted as well instead of a deep well. And do that. I'm gonna loosen these bolts up, but I'm not gonna take them all the way out yet. I also need to go the right direction. That would be really helpful. And then what we're gonna do, get the caliper pressed back a little bit if we can. So what I do is I take a flathead screwdriver, as long as you got. What I'm gonna do is come in from the caliper, and I'm trying to get on top of this brake pad. I'm reusing my rotors, so I don't want any pressure or scratches on my rotor. If I wasn't reusing my rotor, I wouldn't care, and I would just come in through the slit in the side of the caliper and press against the rotor without worrying about it, because I'm going to replace it. But I'm going to reuse these, so I don't want to put any scratches or anything. So here's the slit that I'm talking about. There's a hole here and a hole here, and so you can get your screwdriver in at a pretty severe angle like this, and I can feel that I'm on top of the brake pad. And what may happen, at least on this vehicle, is as you pry, it may try to pull the caliper off. But if you can get in there enough, then you can hopefully press the caliper out. And what's that's doing is pressing the pistons back in. And remember, we took the cap off the brake fluid reservoir earlier. And so the purpose of this is that you have leverage here, because otherwise it can be really difficult to press the pistons back in. Because what happens is when you take the caliper off, the pistons that are right in here are out, because these brake pads are thinner than the brake pads that we're putting on. So you have to press the pistons back to make room for the bigger, thicker brake pad. So I'm getting a little bit of play here, and that's helpful. Anything you can get is good. If you can get a good bite, that's great. But again, you want to make sure when you're coming through here that you're on the brake pad and not the rotor. And I'm actually getting some distance here. I can actually put my finger between the brake pad and the caliper now, right in there. So that's great. I am excited about that. Now, you might have a brake piston or caliper tool. They do make those, which is awesome. And there's two pistons in this caliper on the front, and so I'm gonna do this on both sides just to get both pistons pressed back as far as I can. All right, I think I'm doing about as good as I can get it. And I'll show you my process next for getting it the rest of the way by hand. So now we'll take these 14 mil bolts out the rest of the way. There's not a lot of threading on it. It's a pretty short bolt actually. So do that, and then do the top one. And I'm gonna keep a hand on it just to make sure. And that came loose, and put the ratchet down. And then we'll just roll the caliper off like this. And then we'll go ahead and hang it up. So I use a bungee cord like this. They're pretty cheap. You can get it at the auto parts store or wherever. Another option is if you have a bucket or block of wood or something that's tall that you can just set back behind here and just set it on. But the whole point is you don't want pressure on the brake line here because you don't want to ruin the brake line or anything like that. So I'm just gonna hook in through there, through the bolt hole, and then use this bolt here on that side to hold it like that. So I've got no pressure on this. The next steps would be to press the calipers back, and this is what I'm talking about right here. These are the pistons, and normally they'd be out a little bit more, but I was actually able to get them pressed back in pretty good, so I don't think I'm going to need to. But my process is to take one of the old brake pads. This is one trick. So you're gonna pop these out. You can use a screwdriver, but again, don't put pressure on the face of the rotor. You want to put pressure out on the pad to pop it out. But I would just take one of the old brake pads, put it in here, and then I use one of these quick grips. So I'll put the brake pad in and then put that on there like that. And the reason that I use a brake pad is across both is because it puts even pressure on both pistons to push the fluid back in. So again, I don't think I need to, but you can do it that way. Another option is to not use a brake pad in here. But if you do that, then you want to make sure that you have both pistons secured. So I would use two of these quick grips, one on each piston. And the reason is that if you push one piston in, the pressure will push the other piston out and you'll just keep fighting yourself. So you need to have both pistons being pressed in about the same time. So like I showed you with the brake pads, you can use a screwdriver to pop them out. But you don't want to put pressure on your screwdriver back towards the rotor. You can get it on the edge here and just press out on the brake pad and it'll come right out. We are going to show you the old versus the new brake pads. So these are the oldies that we just took off, and you can see how thin those are. If you're new to brake pads, this is the material that presses against your rotors, and so if you flip it on its side, that's the thickness right there up against this steel plate. So if you feel grinding or hear grinding, that probably means this material is all gone and you're down to the metal and it's grinding on your rotors. And here's the new one, which I'll bring over. You can see the difference in the thickness on the material there. So thankfully, with these are pretty thin, which is good. I've gotten my money's worth out of them, which is great. And another thing to note when you take brake pads off any car is you want to note, are they wearing evenly front to back or top to bottom, I guess, because if you have wear one way or the other, that could indicate some other issues going on with you. Thankfully, mine are wearing very evenly top to bottom on both the front and the back. The other thing you can check is and pay attention to is if one brake pad is wearing more faster or slower than the other brake pad, could indicate some issues. Maybe you just need more lubrication on your brake pad tabs when you put the new ones on, and we'll show you that here in just a minute. On this one, it has these clips that are the guides for the brake pads, so the brake pads just slide in there like that. The ones I got, the new brake pads come with new clips. You don't have to use those. You could reuse the olds, but since I have new ones, I'm gonna go ahead and swap them out. And you've got the tops and the bottoms are different. So you want to make sure before you take them off to match them up so you know which one goes which way. And just pop in like that, and that's it. And then the bottom pops right off. And be careful there just not to scratch your rotor. And then we'll slide that one in like that. Boom, done. And then it's the same process on the back side. The clips swapped out in the front and back, and I've got my brake pads ready to go on. And remember that you want to make sure that when you're putting them on, you're orienting them to the curve of the rotor. So the curve of the pad matches the curve of the rotor. Also, you want to make sure that you get some brake lubricant, because what that does is that you want to lubricate these guides so that the brake pad slides well through the caliper. You just put a little bit on and then just rub it all around. Goope, goope, oh, goope, goope now. Goope, goope, oh, goope. Make up some songs, you know. Have some fun while you're working. I'm gonna do both tabs. My trick is I'm gonna put the brake pad in at a little bit of an angle like this, right into this here. And then I'm going to twist it so it pushes that metal piece over like that and get that in. And then I'm going to line up the top. Once you kind of get it in place, you can just give it a little pop, pop, and there you go. It's the exact same process on the back side, just a little harder because it's a little tighter to work, but I'll get that on and then we'll get the caliper put back on. Next thing is, with your caliper pistons pressed back, to go ahead and get the caliper put back on. So I'm gonna get it over the pads, get it lined up, and I like the opposite of putting it on. I usually like to do the top bolt first and just get it started, because then it just gives it some support while I finagle the bottom bolt in. And so you can get it around there like that, bolt in, and you just kind of got to wiggle it a little bit till you feel like it's going in. There we go. Then we grab our ratchet. I've got the handy electric ratchet, which I'm super grateful for. Makes things easy. And then I'll tighten it up with the regular one. And you want to make sure these are pretty tight. You can do torque specs and all that. Really just crank down on it, because these are your brakes, and you don't want your brakes coming apart on you on the road. That would not be good. So just go with as much as comfortable as you are. You don't want to overdo it, or you might strip them out. But you definitely want them to be snug. This is not a place to be like, oh yeah, good enough. No, you want it to be good and snug. So I usually give it however tight I feel comfortable, and then I go back and give it just another oomph, and we should be good to go. So the last step before you're ready to roll is to put the fluid cap back on, and so we'll do that right there. And there we go. And then we'll get this cover back on. And then a reminder that to press your brake pedal a few times before you just pull out of the driveway, because that will build up pressure on your system, because you relieved the pressure when you took that cap off. So you want to make sure you have brakes before you pull away. So pump your brake pedal a few times, you'll feel that pressure come back, and then you're ready to go. Thanks for watching. Hope you are able to navigate this project well, and that this video us showing you our experience is helpful. If you have questions, feel free to comment in below. And remember that no matter what project you got going on with your cars, you got this.